All right, I'll be honest. Recently, the news has been hard. For many Americans, life has been hard. People are struggling. They're feeling disappointed. They're feeling unseen. They're feeling unheard. I get it. Many of the topics we cover on this show can feel super heavy. So I just wanted to take a little time at the end of today's show on a rallying note. When I think about a person who can inspire hope for our future, I think of the late Georgia Congressman John Lewis. Tuesday marked the 5th anniversary of his passing. Lewis, as we all know, was a civil rights icon. He traveled between states to challenge segregation as one of the 13 original Freedom Riders, a protege of Dr. Martin Luther King. He helped organize the 1963 March on Washington. During the 1965 Bloody Sunday March in Selma, Alabama, Lewis was savagely beaten by police. He suffered a skull fracture in a time where it would have been so easy to become disillusioned and throw his hands up. He didn't. He persevered. He was elected to Congress in 1987. He served for over 30 years representing Georgia's 5th District. In that time, we had fantastic conversations. He famously used the phrase good trouble to advocate for activism in the face of injustice through peaceful, nonviolent action. In 2018, he tweeted, "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." It was in this spirit that thousands of people took to the streets this past week to participate in more than 1,500 good trouble events nationwide. They honored Lewis's legacy, but they also protested the Trump administration's slashing of America's social safety net programs, on which so many people rely. They also protested efforts to roll back protections for immigrants and communities of color. If John Lewis were alive today, he may have found today's political climate to be eerily similar to the one into which he was born, and he fought so hard to change. But if we know anything about John Lewis's character, we know he would not be deterred. Jennifer Rubin wrote about Lewis's enduring example this past week, writing in part, quote, "If someone who witnessed what John Lewis had, someone who had risked his life repeatedly, could maintain a faith in a multi-generational, multi-ethnic, pro-democracy coalition, what right do any of us have to throw up our hands in frustration and walk away from the fight to preserve democracy and eradicate injustice and racism? The fight never ends," end quote. Joining me now is the aforementioned Jennifer Rubin, co-founder and editor-in-chief of The Contrarian and an MSNBC political analyst, and the great friend of our show, Eddie Glaude Jr., distinguished professor of African-American studies at Princeton University. He's the author of the column A Native Son on Substack and the book We Are the Leaders We Have Been Looking For. Welcome to both of you, friends. Thank you for being with us. Jennifer, you know, you write about this in the context of John Lewis and the work he did, but all of us in our inheritances and in our ancestors can find reasons to say the same thing. We have no one gave us the right. They didn't give us the right in previous generations to say this is too much. In times when it really was too much, people still fought.
Absolutely. And that is the responsibility of living in a democracy. For decades, we have taken this heritage for granted. And each and every year, each and every election, we are called upon to defend those fundamental values. And we do see evidence that people are rising to the occasion, even when politicians don't. And you fight not because there's going to be an immediate victory or because there won't be setbacks. You fight because it's the obligation, it's the right thing to do. And over the long haul, we do stumble towards that more perfect nation. And we are capable of self-reflection and self-improvement. And that's why this administration is struggling so hard to censor books, to bully universities, to impede First Amendment rights, because this is the lifeblood of a democracy. And so long as we have that, then progress is possible.
Eddie, I think there's two important things that I've learned from you. And one is, as Jennifer says, the struggle doesn't end. There's no end. You can't think about the fact that there's work to do and then there will be a solution. You just keep on going. And the fact is that it looks different for each of us. We do what we can do. And in the service to society, ultimately, that collective work does usually result in something good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't have to try to imitate standards of struggle. We must understand the problems that are right in front of us. Often can command our attention. We have to find our own talents and align them with those problems. We have to align ourselves with like-minded persons as we fight for the country that we want. And, when we invoke a hero like John Lewis, we have to understand them in the fullness of their complexity. I think John Lewis comes to us as that representative from Georgia, the one who told us to get into good trouble. But when I think about that young man at American Baptist Theological Seminary, when I think about the young man who became a part of this Nashville student movement and gravitated to James Lawson and learned the discipline of nonviolence, when I think about him and what those young people did to the movement in the context of they were an accelerant. They radicalized the movement. And part of what we need to do in this moment, Ali, I think, is understand that what the moment calls for us, from us, is in some ways a radical gesture, a bold announcement that we are refusing to accept the country as it is, as we fight and battle for the country that we want and the country that could be. And that's going to require of us a monumental leap of imagination, it seems to me, and of course, courage.
But what's so interesting, and I'm sure the same thing happens to both of you, I run into people on the street who feel despair and want to share that with me. And I want to tell them, I hear this from everybody. You're actually all in this fight together, and there's a lot of power in it. It's just that people can feel a little alone in these moments. And Jennifer, this is part of it is saying you're not actually. They're good people doing great work right now that will lead to good things in the end. We just can't necessarily see it today.
And that's why protests are so important. That's why I started the Contrarian, to form a community so people have a sense of belonging. People know that they are in this for the long haul. Authoritarians throughout history across the globe have always thrived when they can spread despair, dissension, anger, suspicion. And the antidote to that is solidarity, is hope, is optimism. And we see it in so many ways. We see it in labor unions today, fighting back against these unilateral lawless moves. We see it in civil rights actions. We see it in ordinary citizens who have become really furious over the lawless raids and chaos being spread through our cities and our neighborhoods and our farms because of the ICE raids. So I think there are opportunities. And you know what I say to people, what I wrote in that is, if you're in despair, get up off the couch anyway. Go out there and find some more people and do something. And in that spirit of doing something, you will regain hope and you will inspire other people. And you do not have to do everything. All you have to do is something.
Something. And it is something more than just voting and registering to vote, which we used to think was it. I think you're right, Eddie. It requires a certain degree of radicalization of yourself, whatever that looks like. But you've both written important books. Eddie, your book, We Are the Leaders We've Been Looking For, is sort of an important read in this moment because it speaks to what we need. But your book before that, Begin Again, James Baldwin's America, James Baldwin warned us. He was sort of trying to radicalize us a little bit, right? He was trying to say, do not get comfortable in your complacency about how this all goes. You're going to have to get uncomfortable, and you're going to have to face how the society needs to change.
Absolutely, Ali. Remember that quote from Just Above My Head, his last novel. Responsibility is not lost, he says. Right. Responsibility is abdicated. And if one refuses abdication, then one begins again. Right? And so I think you hit it right on the head. Look, let's be honest. I despair. I can't afford my elegant despair. I find myself having dark days. I'm not okay. The country's not okay. There's no way we can come out of 1 million plus people dead and be okay. I think our politics reflects that the country hasn't quite found its feet yet. But I do think this is the case, that what Donald Trump and his minions are doing requires a response at scale. We need to just simply say, like Bartleby the Scriveners in Melville, I prefer not to. And that has to take a form that might not be the traditional march, Ali. It might not be kind of peaceful protest in the traditional sense. It might be a general strike for 2 days. We have to do something to say to these folk, no. Otherwise, they're going to use the mechanisms of government to run straight over us. So we have to figure out how to block and tackle at once, it seems to me. And that requires first getting off the couch and not succumbing to despair.
And this idea of pushing back on using the power of the government against us, Jennifer, it's important to point out this is not partisan. This doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, or whether you were a Republican or a Democrat, or whatever you were. It's about coming together to say democracy comes first. The protections of us and our fellow citizens come first.
Absolutely. And in a democratic fight, small d democratic fight, you cannot be putting up a purity test for everyone who wants to join the movement. You can't say, oh, the guy who's running for mayor of New York, we don't like some of his policy suggestions, so we're going to dump on him. Oh, this person wasn't as robust in the fight for women's rights as we wanted. No, we need to take in imperfect allies, and they regard us as imperfect allies, because the fundamental fight for the rule of law, for justice, for equality, for a pluralistic society has to trump everything else, because without it, none of our individual issues, none of our individual policy arguments can proceed. And so I implore people who have differences with politicians, we can be disappointed with elected leaders, fine. But at bottom, you have to find people who are on the same side of this fight. Otherwise, the bad guys will win. Yeah,
I think the whole concept of pluralism, right, is that it's imperfect allies. You don't need to love them. They don't need to be your best friends. You just need to work with them to make a better society. I'm so grateful to the two of you for the hope that you continue to bring. Jen Rubin and Eddie Glaude Jr. We'll be right back. You're watching Velshi on MSNBC.